I stared at my father in disbelief. It felt wrong seeing him like this, glassy-eyed, groaning, and hardly able to keep himself upright. He had always been such a force in my life, or at least an immovable object. Nothing seemed to sway him. He was bulletproof. Freed of his ropes, he groaned and his body lurched forward. I caught him as he fell, and something slipped out of his open jacket. The syringe. I thought Jake used it to inject Eric, but this one was full. No, of course Dad wouldn't have given it to him. He'd never jeopardize Eric's life. The lab had probably been full of doses like this one, and Jake had taken his pick while I was unconscious. I helped Dad onto the floor, laying him on his side so he couldn't fall again or choke on his vomit if it came to it. Then I looked back to the needle. My heart thundered as I reached for it. It takes several doses to induce the transformation. Nolan's words echoed in my head as I gripped the syringe. An emerald green fluid inside of it, the tip of its needle covered with a thin plastic cap. I swallowed, looking back at my dad. He laid on the floor, a trail of spittle falling from his open mouth onto the hardwood. Every moment he would twitch, sometimes his legs, sometimes his arms, sometimes his neck. Is this what the serum did to him? I slipped it inside my jacket. Jake knows, I said quietly. I wasn't sure if I was talking to myself or him. That's why he's done this to you. He knows Nolan's dead, so he's turning you into one of them. I became aware of the weight of the dagger on my belt, the feeling of its cool silver against my thigh. He needs you to summon per diem. I couldn't let that happen. Dad's eyes rolled in his head, but I knew he was looking at me, or trying to. His voice was nearly gone now, barely there beneath the moans of pain. He was becoming one of them. A monster. Matthew, he said. Please. I raced through the woods, hardly aware of the bushes and brambles scratching at my face. I knew where I needed to go now, beyond any shadow of a doubt. The river was where we met Nolan. It was where he'd given us the book. It was where our nightmare began. And it was where it would end. I leapt over a fallen tree, landing in a puddle of mud with a cold splash. I shivered as it sprayed up and covered me, but the sensation was gone as soon as it had come. I didn't have time to be cold, to be distracted. I needed to get to Eric. At my pace, and with the help of the night vision goggles, it didn't take me long to reach the river. When I did, I positioned myself behind a large, thick berry bush. At my proximity, it was enough for me to see through the bramble, but not enough to be seen at a distance. I twisted the focus on the goggles, zeroing them on the shore. Eric stood just short of the water, his back to me and his hands on his sides. He was as still as a tree, and silent, gazing out over the dark river. I parted the bush enough to get a clear view of the shoreline. No sign of Jake. Damn. Without seeing him first, I couldn't prepare for him. And if I couldn't prepare for him, then I didn't have a chance. I chewed my lip nervously. Maybe Jake wasn't here. Maybe he'd gone off to do something for his bullshit ritual and left Eric alone. Maybe I could approach Eric now and the two of us could get in Jake's truck and tear out of here. No. That would be too easy, too obvious. Besides, Jake knew I was still alive. If he had wanted me dead, he would have made sure of it. Was he waiting for me then? Fuck. I was always horrible when it came to parsing through this planning shit. I stared at my brother for several long moments, wondering what he would do if the roles were reversed. Then a thought struck me. Why wasn't he running, trying to make a break for it? Eric was all alone out there. Unless he wasn't. A twig snapped in the distance, somewhere along the riverbank, and the hairs on the back of my neck stood on end. I swallowed, holding onto the dagger with a vice grip. Another snap of a branch, followed by the shuffling sound of parting brush. Jake lumbered from the other end of the tree line. He carried a black bag, tucked neatly under one of his massive brown arms. Christ, he looked rough. His eye sockets were two red gaping holes while his body was covered in fur matted by layers of crimson. My heart raced in anticipation. I had them both in my sight. Now, I just needed an opening, an opportunity to plunge the dagger into Jake's heart. Easier said than done.
"Can you feel him, Eric?"
Jake said, his voice more raspy than before. The shotgun blasts may not have killed him, but they seemed to have slowed him down some. He sounded pained, and his movements looked sluggish. He stopped short of Eric and dropped the garbage bag on the stone shore with a dull thump.
"He's on his way. Nearly here."
He leaned down and untied the top of the bag with a sigh.
"When this is all over with, you'll thank me. It's a real honor, I'm telling you."
Eric didn't say anything, but slumped his head forward. His silhouette, stark in the black of the night, looked like a portrait of defeat. He'd given up. Maybe he had the right idea. I was too stubborn, though, by about 10 miles. Jake reached inside the garbage bag and pulled something out. Something large. I narrowed my eyes at it and then choked back a retch. It was a corpse. One mostly rotten, its flesh blue and black, with fungus growing all over its face. And I knew that face.
"Ma would have wanted to see this,"
Jake explained to Eric.
"She spent her whole life trying to make it happen."
I brought a hand to my mouth, feeling sick to my stomach. That was Grandma's corpse. Had he kept it this whole time? What had we buried in the funeral?
"There,"
he said, sitting Grandma up against a large rock.
"I told you I'd make it happen, Ma."
He ran a finger through her brittle gray hair and then slowly lowered himself next to her.
"Soon you'll be able to rest, Ma. I swear on that."
I recoiled, the sight making me nauseous. Jake was more monstrous inside than out. First he'd killed Grandma, and now he was parading her corpse around like a doll at a kid's tea party. I squeezed the dagger and took a deep breath. Then another. I can do this, I told myself. I have to do this. It didn't seem like there'd be a better opportunity. The way he sat now, looking toward Eric and the river, meant his back was to me. The trouble was, he was sitting in damn near the center of the stone shore. Getting over there without making a sound would be hard. Maybe impossible if the rocks were wet from the storm. They were likely to slip and shift. Damn it. Think, Matt. I ran a hand through my hair, considering the various ways this scenario might play out. In each of them, Jake turned around and found me and beat me to death. I looked at Eric, who remained as still and silent as ever. If all roles were reversed, he'd have known what to do. That was his whole shtick, planning shit out and not paying the price for being an impulsive moron. Still, it was a role somebody had to fill. I said a quiet prayer and then moved from the brush as silently as I could. The forest floor was loamy and soft, ideal for my sneakers to live up to their namesake. The stone beach, on the other hand, I paused upon reaching it, gazing forward with the goggles. Jake still hadn't moved, though it sounded like he was whispering something to Grandma's corpse. A shiver ran through me and I ignored it. It was far from the weirdest shit I have seen all night. Shake it off, Matt. I stared at the slick stones and swallowed. One stray pebble clacking against another would quite literally jeopardize everything. I had to do this carefully. Perfectly.
"Go on, Eric,"
Jake said. The sound of his voice nearly made my heart beat out of my chest.
"Welcome him home."
I don't think we should, Eric said. Have you thought this through? What do you really know about Pretium? His voice was uneven, stuttering and anxious. Good. That meant he was still my brother.
"I've thought about this for decades,"
Jake growled.
"I know you're a good kid, Eric. I know that. Which is why I made you his host."
His massive furry hand tussled Grandma's decaying hair.
"Ma always felt it should have been Maddie, but he's too much of a shit, you know? And Pretium, he deserves the best."
Eric whimpered, his fingers dancing at his sides.
"Still now,
Jake said.
I told you to stay still.
I know, I just... What if Prediem isn't what you think he is? What if he's going to do something terrible? Jake chuckled, and when he spoke, his voice was laced with menace.
He'll do plenty of terrible things, I'll bet. But sometimes terrible is necessary. You and I, Eric, we can't possibly understand something like him. Something so much greater than us. Greater than anything.
Eric didn't move. He didn't speak. He just watched the river, his messy hair caught in the dying storm's breeze.
He'll save us,
Jake said solemnly.
But first, we need to welcome him home. Now go on. Say his name. Guide him.
Eric was silent.
Say it,
Jake bellowed, and I nearly jumped. His voice was so loud that my ears rang. Eric winced at Jake's demand, but whimpered Prediem's name all the same.
Again, guide him home.
Prediem. The air seemed to shift, the clouds growing darker. I wasn't an expert on dark magic or evil rituals, but this didn't seem like an especially positive sign. I was running out of time. Either I moved or I lost Eric forever. Fuck. Jake grunted and the sound of shifting stones filled the night. He adjusted his position while holding a hand to his side, over a blood-matted strip of fur, most likely one of the places Dad had shot him. So I thought. Regular punishment couldn't kill him, but it definitely still hurt him. He groaned, leaning back, and stones began tumbling down the shore, clacking into the river with dull splashes. Now! I slipped forward, my footsteps in concert with his movements, using their sound to mask my own. Yes, this could work. Another stretch from Jake, another step from me. And then he stopped moving, comfortable at long last. The stupid ape. Shit. I was left standing in the middle of the stone shore, halfway between the tree line and Jake. If I risked moving again, there was a good chance he'd hear me, and then that'd be it. Game over. But if I didn't...
Almost there, Eric,
Jake said, looking up at the darkening sky.
Keep speaking his name. Guide him and you'll be rewarded for it.
He chuckled.
You'll be the body of a god.
Eric did, his voice sounding broken, fragile and scared. Prediem, he said, his shoulders quake with silent sobs. Prediem! Prediem!
Louder!
Jake screamed. He beat the ground with one of his massive fists.
He needs to hear you from beyond the veil, don't he? Shit, I can hardly hear you from over here.
That answered one question. Jake's hearing and mine weren't so different after all. That was good. I just hoped my head-to-toe mud bath would be enough to hide my scent from him.
I ain't gonna remind you again, boy. Say his fucking name and be loud about it.
Eric whimpered, and I felt horrible. But I needed him to speak louder too. I needed his voice now more than ever. Prediem, he said. Prediem! Good. With each of his loud shouts, I stole another meter of space, and soon I was close enough that I smelled the rot and decay of Grandma's corpse. Another 2 steps, and I smelled the matted blood on Jake's fur. Being so close to him, with such a clear view, made me appreciate what a monster he truly was. I shifted the dagger in my grip, swallowing as I tried my best to determine just how I was going to plunge this thing into his heart. Where was his heart anyway? His torso was massive. It seemed liable to be swimming around anywhere in there. Wait, I thought. What if I didn't aim for his heart at all? Nolan had cautioned that Jake wouldn't be put down by a few slashes of silver, but maybe I can get the dagger somewhere else to slow him down. His neck, or his spine. If I could hurt him enough that he couldn't hurt me back, I can finish him through the heart. It was a long shot, but then It was also my only shot. Eric shouted per diem's name again, and I crept forward. One step, then another, each footfall guarded by my brother's voice, echoing across the water, over the trees, and apparently into an entirely different dimension. I made a different mental note to avoid mentioning any of this to my therapist if I survived. She already thought I was crazy enough. A moment later, and I took the final step, coming up directly behind Jake. His matted brown fur was short and reeked of blood. Even sitting down, he was nearly 2 feet taller than me. I wouldn't be able to reach his neck, not reliably, but I could sever his spine. Something moved in my periphery, and I glanced. Eric had turned around. He was facing Jake now. Facing me. Shit. No time. I raised the dagger and plunged it forward, but that moment had been enough. Jake was already moving even as the dagger raced toward his spinal column. The dagger sank into his flesh, and he let out a shriek of pain. His wounds sparked and sizzled. He stumbled forward, writhing in agony. He was moving though, which meant I missed his spine. Not good. I dashed forward, knowing I had a window the size of an ant to get this right. I tore the dagger from his back and raised it up, and Jake's arm caught me in the side. I let out a wheeze of surprise as my body flew backwards, landing on the stone shore with a painful crunch, the goggles rolling off my head.
You...
Jake bellowed, rising from the rocks. Fresh blood wound its way from his lower back down to the fur on his legs, and his mouth snarled, its horrible, jagged and broken teeth dripping saliva.
You can't help yourself, can you, Matty?
Each of his words came out in a small roar, while his entire body trembled with anger or pain.
You're a real pain in my ass, and I don't think I care anymore. I think I'm gonna kill you.
He took a step toward me, and it felt like the whole shoreline shook.
Sorry, Ma,
he said, glancing at Grandma's cadaver.
It's him or per diem, and I ain't got a choice.
I scrambled backwards, beat stones slipping beneath my hands and feet. I knew I needed to stand up, needed to run, needed to do anything, but my body was in agony. Jake hadn't held back with that last smack, and it was all I could do to gasp breaths from my panicked lungs. Then I realized how fucked I really was. I'd lost the dagger. Shit. I scanned the area frantically, looking up and down the shore. I must have dropped it when Jake pulverized my ribs. Where was it? There. My heart sank. It was next to a fallen tree, some 30 feet away, and Jake was closing. It was far, much too far. I didn't have a choice though. I lurched to my feet, ignoring the slicing pain tearing across my body, and then I dashed. Each footstep shot daggers through me, but I gripped my teeth and ran in spite of it. Jake was faster. He leapt, his massive body crashing on the stones in front of me, his hands clenched into fists.
Too long,
he growled.
I've let you get away with your disrespect.
I stepped backward, my will to fight evaporating. Jake was hurt, sure, but I was damn near dying. I wheezed another breath, tasting blood in my mouth, and dropped to a knee. The only shot I had stopping this was on the other side of a sasquatch, and I could barely move. It was over. Damn it. Something warm slipped down my cheeks, and I realized I was crying. I fell to my hands and knees, the tears vanishing on the already wet stone. Damn you, you asshole. Jake's shadow draped across me.
Damn me.
He kicked at me and I tumbled, my body rolling over the stones and further from the dagger. I slid to a stop on my back, spitting out a mouthful of blood and gazing up at the sky. It had grown so dark. Jake, I said. It hurt to even speak, but I needed to. With everything I had, I sat myself upright. Let me go instead of Eric. Let me be the host, like Grandma wanted. It was all I had left. I couldn't fight him anymore. I couldn't stop this, but maybe I could still save Eric.
You don't deserve it,
Jake said. He stepped towards me, his demeanor different now, more resolved. It didn't matter what Grandma had wanted. He was finally going to kill me. So be it. I'd given everything I had. And honestly, I was in so much pain that dying seemed easy now. Still, I looked to Eric. I wanted him to know how sorry I was for all of this. I wanted him to know that no matter what, he was my brother and I loved him. Eric was looking back at me, unmoving, silent, and smiling. What? I blinked, his eyes looking different, narrower. His face had lost the anxious framing from earlier. Now he looked calm, collected. Eric? I rasped.
I let you live long enough because you were family, Maddie,
Jake said. I became aware that he was standing beside me now. Eric! I said more loudly. Jake gripped me by my hair and lifted me from the stones.
I figured this family deserved to see the world we were making. Figured you were owed it. But my patience is shot.
His other hand grabbed my arm and squeezed. The pain was unbearable. I screamed, louder and harder than I'd ever screamed in my life. It felt like my muscles, my tendons, and my bones were being ground to dust. He lifted me to his gaping jaws, pressing them against the side of my head.
I'm going to rip you apart, he whispered, limb from limb.
Trees shifted in the distance.
And what's more,
Jake continued, his canines, slick with saliva, sliding against my face with every word.
I'm gonna really have a good time of it.
Something rumbled in the woods, and Jake paused, sniffing at the air. I hung limp by my hair, rotating slowly before him. The rumbling grew deeper, faster, like a rock slide thundering toward us. Jake tossed me to the ground, and I groaned, my body seizing up in pain. I was faintly aware of something sharp digging into me, but I didn't have the energy or will to care anymore.
Fuck,
Jake said. The trees parted, and something massive burst out of them. Something angry.